It's kind of crucial to figure out who the first victim of FNaF is, because depending on who the first victim is, a whole new series of events could follow the beginning of the timeline. So in this video, I wanted to discuss who the first victim is. I also want to talk about the true order of every death in this series. I mean, not really every death in the series, but the first few at least. The main ones from the beginning of the timeline. I actually teased this video a bit in my last theory video, so if you watched that, then you know I will be talking about Elizabeth. But is it really possible for her to be the first victim? Well, let's find out. The four most common candidates for who the first victim is are Charlotte, the bite victim, Susie in the MCI, and Elizabeth. First, let's talk about the option that is literally impossible, Susie in the MCI. The MCI, by the way, is the missing children incident, just in case you guys don't know. While the date of the MCI is still heavily debated, especially with the unfortunate growth of Stitchline games, it's very clear that the MCI, and more specifically Susie, was not the very first victim of the series. We know Susie is the first victim of the missing children incident, but we know at least one other character to have died before any of the victims in the missing children incident, Charlotte. I think this is made very clear in the insanity ending of FNaF 6, where Henry describes William's madness of child murder as
a wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
So Charlotte was definitely killed before the missing kids. But does this also confirm that Charlotte was the first victim of the series? Well, not necessarily. I think what Henry says is trying to say that Charlotte was the first child William directly killed. As for the bite victim, I think it's pretty clear that he is not the first victim of the series. My last theory was all about Midnight Motorist and how the runaway kid is clearly the bite victim. Since we know Midnight Motorist was after Charlotte's death, the bite victim was still alive when she died, meaning he wasn't the first victim. But a heavily debated topic is whether the bite victim died before or after the missing children incident. So let's briefly talk about that. In Midnight Motorist, we see the bite victim running away from his house. The reason he left was because of the footprints outside the window, likely Shadow Freddy luring him away from his house. The hint from Scott that what is seen in shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child seems to imply that the bite victim saw Shadow Freddy and assumed he was Fredbear in the shadows. And when Shadow Freddy lures the bite victim to Fredbear's, the bite victim witnesses William killing Charlotte. And this is why the bite victim is so scared of Fredbear, because Shadow Freddy made him watch his father kill his best friend. What I'm trying to say is that the bite victim didn't witness the missing children incident, he witnessed William killing Charlotte. This is what makes him afraid of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie and Fredbear's family diner. In Midnight Motorist, William alludes to this not being the first time the bite victim snuck out, but because this was the only time Shadow Freddy showed up, it's certainly his last. William saying he will be sorry when he comes back clearly seems to be telling us that this minigame is the reason the bite victim was locked in his room at the beginning of FNaF 4. The first minigame in FNaF 4 took place in the morning directly after Midnight Motorist. If this is true, and it very much seems to be, there's no time between the beginning and end of the FNaF 4 minigames for William to kill the kids. With all that being said, I do understand why people believe the missing children incident is before the bite of E3. I just don't. Two of the main three pieces of evidence honestly just don't really work to me. But I won't get into that right now as I've discussed them in other videos. The only piece of evidence I do think is fairly valid is Pigtail Girl's lines, but I do have a counter argument. As I've discussed in videos before, most especially in my video on the secrets of Fredbears, the Fredbear plushie in the final minigame of FNaF 4 is clearly Charlotte, the puppet. The main reason we know this isn't just the same entity as in the rest of the minigames, is because the color of the text is different to how it is in the other minigames. But interestingly enough, the Fred plush in that minigame shares a text color with Pigtail Girl, and while there are a couple other characters in FNaF 4 that share a text color, those are just two side characters that literally don't matter at all, at least to FNaF 4 itself. But the Fredbear plushie is arguably one of the most important parts of the game. Though it's possible that it's a coincidence, I don't think it is. So to understand what I'm saying, we should probably talk about the new kid just a little bit. In the story, Kelsey seems to die, and his vocal cords are sliced, but he just pops up again, able to speak without any springlock scars at a new school, pretending nothing happened, acting like there was nothing wrong with what just happened, acting like he didn't just get springlocked and brutally murdered. This implies that Kelsey wasn't exactly real, but just a projection from an actual spirit. a kid who was dead created a projection in the form of an actual human body. What if Charlotte is doing the same here, just projecting herself as Pigtail Girl, just to keep an extra set of eyes on the bite victim? It would also explain how she knows about the animatronics moving, because the puppet is the animatronic that has been moving, because she is possessed by Charlotte. So I don't think the missing children incident was before the bite of 83, but I also don't think it happened in 1985, simply for the reason that there isn't really any evidence suggesting that it is. The events in Into the Pit much more closely match the events of Save Them from FNaF 2, and The Silver Eyes being the first book in the series parallels FNaF 1 as being the first game in the series. It follows a very similar storyline in that the main character, the child of one of the Freddy's creators, returns to Freddy's for the first time in 10 years. In Michael's case, it was more so returning to this specific Freddy's building for the first time in 10 years, since the first Freddy's and the third Freddy's, aka FNaF 1, were the same building. But in The Silver Eyes, the story was 10 years after the missing children incident in 1995. So if we translate that over to FNaF 1, which is in 1993, it would be 10 years after the MCI, which would place it in 1983. So that's when I believe the missing children incident happened, in 1983, but after the bite of 83. This is one of my theories that is criticized heavily, and I'm also made fun of for it on Discord, but I really don't give a shit because it's my theory, and to me it makes the most sense. But whether you agree or disagree, that's completely fine. Believe whatever you want. So we've now determined when the missing children incident takes place, but what was the order of deaths for each of the missing kids? Well, luckily for us, Help Wanted and Security Breach give us our answers with Pizza Party and one of the shops in the daycare. Ultimate Custom Night confirms that Susie is the first victim of the missing children incident, so who comes next? Well, Pizza Party actually gives us a good vantage point as to where all the other 4 victims place in the order. We play as Gabriel going to his own birthday party, but when he gets there, 2 out of the 3 animatronics in the room have party hats on or near them, implying those children at this point are already dead. So before Gabriel dies, Jeremy and Susie are already dead, but there's no party hat on Foxy, meaning Fritz is yet to die. So the order at this point comes to Susie, then Jeremy, then Gabriel. Since Golden Freddy isn't in Pizza Party though, or FNaF VR at all for that matter, Golden Freddy could have been killed before Jeremy, after Gabriel, last, we don't really know, until Security Breach. In Security Breach in the daycare, there's a shop with numbered balloons. Some are just gray, and some are colored. 1 is gray, 2 is blue, 3 is gray, 4 is like a reddish orange, and 5 is golden. So this is the order that the kids died. 1 and 3 are blank because we already have those narrowed down, Chica and Freddy. 2 is blue to represent Bonnie, who we know to have died before Gabriel, and the last 2 are the answer to what we didn't know before. Fritz dies after Gabriel, and Cassidy dies last. And that leaves us with one more child, Elizabeth. Where does she fit into all this? Opinions vary greatly on this topic. Some people believe she died after the MCI, some people believe before the bite, some people believe both of those things. But could she have died first? Well, let's think about it. Midnight Motorist takes place right after Charlie's death, with William coming home after killing her. The weird thing is, though, that Elizabeth is nowhere to be seen. She's also nowhere in FNaF 4 either, so where is she? A lot of people argue that just because she's not here doesn't mean she's dead, but the issue is that there's literally nowhere else for her to be. Not only that, but FNaF 6 is a game about tying up loose ends. Most people agreed that Elizabeth had already been killed by the time of the bite of 83, partially because she's nowhere to be seen in FNaF 4. If this wasn't the case, and most people believed it was, then Scott would have made sure to clear that up by making Elizabeth present in Midnight Motorist. But in having her be absent, it's implied that she dies before Charlotte does. But why? Why would William make the Funtime animatronics dangerous if he wasn't even a murderer yet? Well, he didn't. What if Elizabeth's death was actually just an accident? What if Circus Baby wasn't intended to kill? Just think about it. Even in the Silver Eyes trilogy, Circus Baby wasn't actually made to kill. The reason Baby killed Elizabeth in the books is actually because of the anger that had been infused into it from Henry. Henry built the Charlie bots because he believed Charlie's spirit was in the Ella doll, so he turned Ella into Charlie and made more bots. But as he made them, he grew more and more insane and angry, and his anger fueled the last Charlie bot. He never finished the final bot because while he was making it, he knew something was wrong. That's the whole reason it kills Elizabeth in the books. And you may also think William added on the perks to make her dangerous, but no, not really, because William also didn't finish the progress on her. Baby wasn't made to kill, she kills Elizabeth because of the negative emotions inside the baby animatronic. But of course, the novel trilogy doesn't take place in the game universe, so how do we know it can be the same in the games? Well, we know that William tries to keep Elizabeth away from Baby. A lot of people argue that this could be reverse psychology, but William really has no reason to want his children dead, even if he doesn't care about them. So yeah, he tries to keep her away because just like Henry in the books, he realized something was wrong. But on Baby's blueprints and stitch location, we see that she has an emergency stop. This would have stopped Elizabeth from dying, but instead it did nothing. That doesn't make sense unless these abilities and perks that Baby has were added on to her later on in the timeline, after William had become a murderer. He added the perks to make Baby a killer. And same with Ballora, and he also made Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy when Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals opened, which was after FNaF 1, not when Elizabeth died. So that would imply that Elizabeth was killed before Baby was made into a murder machine. So what happened? I think that after Mrs. Afton died, William started being slowly driven into insanity. And by the time Circus Baby's Pizza World rolled around, he was going more and more insane. But I think that Afton and Henry both worked on Circus Babies together. William builds Ballora himself based on Mrs. Afton, and his anger and insanity fueled her, making Ballora actually act like Mrs. Afton, similar to how in the books, when Henry's anger in losing Charlotte caused Ella to act like Charlotte. Mrs. Afton doesn't possess Ballora, but the anger and insanity that was built up in William based on the loss of Mrs. Afton causes Ballora to essentially become Mrs. Afton, just like Ella essentially became Charlie. But when William and Henry were making Circus Baby, William's insanity fueled her and caused her to be dangerous. William notices something is wrong with Baby and tries to keep Elizabeth away, but when Circus Baby's Pizza World opens, it doesn't work. Elizabeth is killed. But since they built Baby together, William blames Henry. He blames Henry for the death of his daughter, so in retaliation, he kills Henry's daughter. William kills Charlotte as revenge. But all of this might have just been a waste of time, because technically, the first victim of FNaF is actually Mrs. Afton. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then please do leave a like and subscribe. Stay tuned for my upcoming theories, most notably why Felix the Shark was scrapped. That's the theory I'm working on right now, so stay tuned for that video and any other future theories that I have coming up. So yeah, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.